Good morning. Happy last day of winter. I was like wishful wardrobing today when I saw that tomorrow was the first day of spring. My name is Robin Carter, and I will be your worship associate this morning. It is great to be here with you all. As we begin today's service, I want to draw your attention to the flowers on the chalice table. They are given by Stacy Jackson in celebration of her 8th wedding anniversary to Melanie Osment. Congratulations. Scott is out of the pulpit today, as is the UUCS tradition of creating space for our minister to recharge each month. But I'm delighted to say that we have the Reverend Dr. Carl Gregg as our guest speaker this morning. The Reverend Dr. Carl Gregg has been a full-time minister for 2 decades, a Unitarian Universalist minister since 2012. He is an authorized meditation teacher through Buddhist Geeks and holds a Doctor of Ministry and a diploma in the art of spiritual direction from the San Francisco Theological Seminary. He loves long-distance running and is an adoring cat dad to Cole Nidre and Shemesh, and a devoted dog dad to Dobby and Scott. He and his wife Megan are waiting to welcome a child into their family through open adoption. I want to call your attention to the title of his meditation as we prepare our hearts and minds for today's service. You can check out the front cover of your order of service. Field Notes on Building the Beloved Community. While this might not stick out to you, it was like a beacon to me. The article, the beloved community as compared to a beloved community. Why did that tiny little word jump off the page at me when I was preparing for this service with Carl? Well, turn to your front page of your Connect. Y'all know the Connect is your guide of all things great goodness happening at this church. The very first item there, the Mission Vision Covenant update. This was the draft mission statement that the MVC team shared earlier this month. Together, we create the beloved community, growing in wonder and care, open to everyone. As a member of the MVC team, I can tell you that we carefully selected and thoroughly discussed each and every word in that statement down to the "the." The "the" is significant. "The" makes it global, universal, where all are connected. "A" is singular and set apart, one of many. We wrestled with that. And I was overjoyed to see Carl's meditation title just as further affirmation of the work being done here and thought and care that was given by everyone on the team. I hope that you are as excited to hear more on the context of building the beloved community as I am, as we seek to co-create anti-racist, anti-oppressive, multicultural, beloved communities here in the 21st century. Again, help me welcome the Reverend Dr. Carl Gregg and his wife Megan this morning. Please join me now in singing hymn number 347 in your gray hymnal, Gather the Spirit. Again, 347, rise and make a joyful noise with me as you are willing and able.
This morning, everybody, or at least where we say where I come from. Hey, y'all. My name is Alan Jenkins, and I serve as president of the Board of Trustees of your Unitarian Universalist Church of Spartanburg. Welcome members, friends, and visitors this morning, whether you are in the sanctuary, that's not as easy a word to say as you might think, in the sanctuary or joining us virtually. We are a welcoming congregation, and whether you are in the room or you are online, you are welcome, you are valued, and you are loved. And now for a few important announcements from the 4 pages you'll find in the back of your bulletin titled Connect. Welcome visitors. If you are visiting with us this morning, we would love to meet you and share more about the life of this congregation. Visitor cards may be found in the pocket on the back of the chair in front of you. Please feel welcome to fill one out and place it in the offering plate during the service so that we can connect with you. The Mission Vision Covenant update. Please attend one of our Vision Cafes either today after the service or next Sunday, March 26th, also after the service. Enjoy a potluck lunch and a conversation about creating a vision of who we want to become as a church. You can still sign up for next Sunday's cafe, and if you want to come today but haven't signed up yet, don't worry about it, just come on. And thank you for helping to create our future together. Let's say you've been coming around for a little bit, maybe you're a friend of the church and you really enjoy what you've seen and want to be more a part of it. We invite you to take our next Path to Membership class being held April 16th. For more information, please see Deb Williams. Let's say you're a member and you want to be even more involved, because of course you do. Now it turns out that we've got a great president lined up for next year with our very own Mel Ritchie. But our leadership development team is on the lookout for a new president-elect for the next church year. They also want to find a new board trustee and a new chair for leadership development. Do you have a passion for service, a taste for leadership, and an interest in any of these positions? Please talk to Claire Van Sant and let's put your name in the hat. Let's say you've got a talent for such things but are kind of on the fence. Talk to me, because I'd love to talk you right into it. Thank you, thank you. Our UUCS is a place of warmth, kindness, and welcome, and that is because of each and every one of you. Every time we come together, we make this world a better place. It brings me great comfort and joy to see you all here. Thank you. Now, you're not done with me yet, because now I'd like to invite forward our scouts for recognition. We've got Aiden, Canyon, Sean, Rebecca, and Will listed. Y'all come on up. Or as Bob Barker would say, come on down. Scouting is an international program focused on character development, leadership training, and high adventure. For generations, members and friends of our congregation have been a part of the scouting movement, from new scouts just beginning their journey to state and national leaders of both the Girl Scouts and the Boy Scouts. We stand today in a rich tradition of leaders encouraging all of us to make this world a better place through our character and actions. Today, we want to honor our current scouts, participants in many troops across our city. Each will receive a patch to signify their service to our community through the scouting movement today. On behalf of our whole congregation, thank you all for stepping forward as the new generation of leaders on whom we can depend. And those words were written by someone who I believe was an Eagle Scout. I don't know if he really was, but if he wasn't, he can refute me next week when he's back. Oh, buddy. Sir, congratulations. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
And now for the lighting of our chalice. Our opening reading comes from Letter to a Young Activist During Troubled Times by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, first-generation American writer. Estes is a lifelong activist in service of the voiceless. And as a post-trauma recovery specialist and psychoanalyst, she is also the author of Women Who Run with the Wolves, which remained on the New York Times bestseller list for 145 weeks. Mis estimados queridos, my esteemed ones, do not lose heart. We were made for these times. I have heard from so many recently who are deeply and properly bewildered. They are concerned about the state of affairs in our world right now. Abject disregard of what the soul finds most precious and irreplaceable, and the corruption of principled ideals have become, in some large societal arenas, the new normal, the grotesquerie of the weak. Ours is a time of almost daily jaw-dropping astonishment and often righteous rage over the latest degradations of what matters most to civilized, visionary people. Yet I urge you, ask you, gentle you, to please not spend your spirit dry by bewailing these difficult times. Especially, do not lose hope, most particularly because the fact is, we were made for these times. I grew up on the Great Lakes and recognize a seaworthy vessel when I see one. Regarding awakened souls, there have never been more able crafts in the waters than there are right now across the world. And they are fully provisioned and able to signal one another as never before in the history of humankind. I would like to take your hands for a moment and assure you that you are built well for these times. Despite your stints of doubt, your frustrations in writing all the needs change right now, or even feeling you have lost the map entirely, you are not without resource. You are not alone. Look out over the prow. There are millions of boats of righteous souls on the waters with you. In your deepest bones, you have always known this is so. When a great ship is in a harbor and moored, it is safe. There can be no doubt. But that is not what great ships are built for. Thank you, choir. Thank you, Aaron and Ron and Cindy. Let us gather at the Rippling Bowl to share joys and concerns, as is our custom here. Remembering what the bowl represents, a shell or stone released into the water creates a ripple, and depending upon what you're releasing, the joys can be multiplied or the sorrows be lessened. This is a time-honored tradition where we are encouraged to take a moment to reflect and acknowledge the mutual support of our community. For those of you joining us virtually this morning, it is my honor to release 2 stones into the Rippling Bowl on your behalf, one for your joys and one for your sorrows. Let us now come. Every week, we come together as a congregation to speak the words of our covenant together. The simplest definition of the word covenant I know is a promise. It captures who we are, what we value, and how we strive to live together in this world. It's a promise that we make to ourselves and to each other. The words of the covenant are printed in today's order of service. For those of you watching virtually, that's accessible on the homepage of the church website. I invite you to please join me in speaking these living words together. We are a people of faith and hope. Together we covenant to strive to become our better selves, to honor both the critical mind and the generous heart, to prove that diversity need not mean divisiveness, and to respond to systems of violence and oppression with the power of a love beyond belief. For those of you at home, now's a good time to engage with the chat during the live YouTube stream. And for those of us in the sanctuary, take a moment to look around you and find a face that maybe you haven't seen in a while, perhaps a new member or a visitor. Feel free to remain seated during this time, but we will now take a few minutes to share joy with those around you being considerate of everyone's personal preferences for greeting. All right, folks, that was your hint in case you didn't pick up on it. I invite you now to share your financial gifts. Please continue to support the work of the church so that we can fund the causes we cherish, do the work we value, and work alongside various organizations in our community who share our mission. You also can give online to ensure that your generosity gets counted along with so many others who call this church home. Thank you for your continued generosity. Let us bring our gifts.
Me and all my friends, we're all misunderstood. They say we stand for nothing, there's nowhere we ever could. And we see everything that's going wrong with the world and those who lead it. We just feel like we don't have the means to rise above and beat it. So we keep waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. It's hard to beat the system when we're standing at a distance. So we keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. Now if we had the power to bring our neighbors home from war, they would have never missed a Christmas. No more ribbons on the door. When you trust your television, what you get is what you got. When they own the information, oh, they can bend it all they want. That's why we're waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. It's not that we don't care, we just know that the fight ain't fair. So we keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. On population. So we keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. No, I keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change. We keep on waiting, waiting on the world to change, waiting on the world to change, waiting on the world to change, waiting on the world to change.
John Mayer never sounded better. Join me now in silence as we prepare for today's meditation.
Good to see you all. This is my first visit to UU Spartanburg, but I grew up a few hours from here in Florence, South Carolina. Some of you have probably been through it on the way to Myrtle Beach. That's how most people know it. I know your assistant minister, Ann, fairly well. We're both Furman alum, even though they lost yesterday. I'm sure some of you. Yeah, great. We'll talk after. Ann and I have traveled in a lot of similar circles. We both come out of liberal Christianity. I was ordained at First Baptist Greenville before becoming UU, which is where she kind of came from before she came to you all. Thank you for welcoming her so warmly. Hear great things about you from Ann. Also appreciate Scott welcoming me here, as well as to Robin as worship associate, Aaron with music. Thank you both for helping co-create this service. As I was considering what to share with you this morning, being here in the upstate, in the foothills of the Blue Ridge Mountains, shaped my decision. We're a little more than an hour away from the camp where I spent most summers from age 10 to 21, first as a camper, later as a counselor, and then a waterfront director, and then a water ski instructor, actually, my last summer there. That last one was pretty great, spending all summer out on Lake James. But honestly, they were all great. I loved almost everything about camp. Any summer camp fans out there? Anybody that's like summer camp is the worst? Okay, I see a hand or two. Just stick with me for a little bit if that's the case for you. Here's why I ask. In UU circles, we often talk about, as Robin, I think, wonderfully described the kind of connection here, we often talk about building the beloved community, a dream we inherited from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And when I imagine what does a beloved community look like? What does a beloved community feel like? Many of the associations that for me immediately spring to mind are memories of those weeks that I spent at summer camp each summer. As a child, camp felt like this almost perfect, idyllic, beloved community. We lived together, ate family-style meals together, played together, swam together, sang songs together, learned new skills together. And I would sometimes wonder, why isn't the world more like summer camp all the time? As I grew up, I began to get a peek behind the curtain, and like the Wizard of Oz, who was revealed to be just another fallible human being like the rest of us, it turns out that creating those incredible summer camp experiences, once I wasn't just the camper, but the one actually responsible for putting on camp, it turns out those summer camp experiences, they're a bit of an exhausting sprint for the adults. It's kind of exhilarating for a few months each summer, but it would be unsustainable to do camp year-round the way it's done in many summer camps. But still, I envied the owners of the camp. They were all permanent residents. Each of the camp owners, they were these incredible, fascinating human beings. And even if that beloved community of camp wasn't sustainable year-round, this is a big camp with 450 campers and 150 staff. How special must it be for that small crew of folks who got to live there year-round? But as I grew up further still, and was invited into the inner circle of the camp's central staff, I discovered that even those phenomenal camp directors and owners who each contributed so much of their unique talents to create the magic of camp each summer, they had imperfections. They had rivalries, I came to see, just like the rest of us. And that for most of the off-season, it turns out, the majority of the year is not summer, although summer is my favorite season. I kind of wish it were. That the vast majority of the year, they didn't live in idyllic, beloved communities. For the most part, they went to their respective homes and families. Not that there's anything wrong with that, and I remain incredibly grateful for my summer camp experiences, but it was also one of my earliest lessons in the beautiful possibilities as well as the difficult realities of building a or the beloved community. Let's consider a parallel story from our own Unitarian Universalist history. Similar to my childhood naivete about summer camp, many of our 19th century spiritual forebears had tremendous optimism about our capacity as a species to build the beloved community for all of humankind. One popular distillation of this perspective was one from the Unitarian minister James Freeman Clarke. In 1886, he wrote this document. It's still actually worth reading. You can Google it. It's called 5 Points on a New Theology. It's actually an explicit refutation of the 5 points of Calvinism, but we won't go into all that right now. He ended it with a proclamation of his firm belief in the progress of mankind. Now, keep in mind, this is the end of the 19th century, right? A long time before second wave feminism. The progress of mankind onward and upward forever. That was just kind of our inevitable, inexorable destiny. He couldn't yet see the shadow side of the Industrial Revolution that was just over the horizon. For him, the Industrial Revolution was just going to be this rising tide that would inevitably lift all boats. Now, to be fair, this optimism was not limited to Unitarians and Universalists. There were 119 communal and utopian societies that were established in the United States between 1800 and 1859. More than half of them were formed in a time known as the Frenetic 40s, a decade marked by some of the most intense reform fervor that this country has ever seen. And as a 19th century analog to those summer camp stories of my youth, let's take a closer look at one of those experiments in beloved community known as Brook Farms. Have you ever been to Brook Farm or toured it? All right, I see a hand or two. It's a utopian community founded by some of our transcendentalist forebears. This is a famous painting of Brook Farm. And in 1841, the Unitarian minister, George Ripley, resigned his pulpit in Boston to form a beloved community on a 200-acre dairy farm, 9 miles outside of Boston. If this sermon leaves you curious to learn more, meditation. Sorry, it's not a sermon here, it's a meditation. I recommend a fascinating book titled Brook Farm, The Dark Side of Utopia. I know it's actually not quite that ominous, but anyway, the book's good. Looking back, the Brook Farm community is sometimes recalled as this bucolic retreat in which the days began with choruses of Mozart and Haydn by the Brook Farm Choir, lots of talented singers. The afternoons were often interrupted to read Dante's great work in the original Italian. The evenings were filled with dramatic tableaux and lectures and dancing. These were lots of highly educated, talented people that flocked to Brook Farm. Life at Brook Farm often did resemble an Arcadian adventure, but what is rarely acknowledged is the desperation that came from unrelieved financial pressures. the loss of faith in Brook Farm's leaders, and the class antagonisms that often simmered just beneath the surface of community civility. Here's a recent photo of Brook Farm as it appears today with the windows boarded up. It turns out that if you are mostly accustomed to an urban life of the mind, spending a few months reading agricultural books does not prepare you mentally, physically, or financially to run a 200-acre dairy farm. Although the transcendentalist residents of Brook Farm found the country life to be invigorating for the most part, a huge initial setback was that after 5 months of nearly back-breaking physical labor around the farm, the community found they still had no reliable source of income, or even more alarming, a feasible financial plan to sustain the association's future operations. The Brook Farm experiment in beloved community ended up lasting 6 years, from 1841 to 1847. And ultimately, it was two tragedies in particular that forced Brook Farm to close. The first one, I will let you draw your own parallels to today. In 1845, 2 years before what was to be the end, there was a smallpox outbreak because many Brook Farm residents had never been vaccinated, even though at that point, Massachusetts, the state they were in, had been requiring compulsory smallpox vaccination for more than 30 years. As the saying goes, history doesn't exactly repeat itself, but it does tend to rhyme. The second of the two tragedies that sealed the fate of the Brook Farm community came a year later in 1846. An accidental fire destroyed a major new building project that might have been devastating alone, but they had never gotten around to putting out an insurance policy on it. That was a devastating loss on top of pre-existing financial strain. So as we seek today to form the or a beloved community, there are many potential lessons from our 19th century forebears. One lesson is that hard work alone is not a guarantee of good results. The residents of Brook Farm, they had the best of intentions, but that alone was not enough to fulfill that promise of progress onward and upward forever. A more important takeaway, perhaps, is to remember to focus on our strengths. The founders of Brook Farm had these lofty, abstracted visions of the agrarian ideal. We have to be farmers, right? But they weren't good farmers. They just wanted to be, or thought that they might be. But they did not have any significant previous farming or business experience. Unlike my grandfather was a farmer his whole life. He was very good at it, but he didn't, that was not their background. They were highly educated, but they failed to focus on their boarding school, which actually, even though education probably was their best chance of actually having a reliable income stream. One of the reasons I find the Brook Farm experience so poignant is that childhood summer camp that I've been telling you about is actually on the site of another historic attempt in building a beloved community. It is the literal site of a radical experiment in education known as Black Mountain College. It lasted a little more than 2 decades, from the mid-1930s to the mid-1950s. The lake you see in the background of this slide is the same lake that you saw in the first slide, just from the opposite direction. It's from the porch of a little tiny white building that you probably can't see in the middle of that slide. If I zoom in, you can see it a little more clearly. That building is the porch where they're sitting. Black Mountain College was the temporary home at various points of many path-breaking figures, including philosopher John Dewey, playwright Thornton Wilder, novelist Henry Miller, writer Aldous Huxley, musician John Cage, and many more. Buckminster Fuller built the first geodesic dome on the field where I learned to play Ultimate Frisbee. And like Brook Farm, Black Mountain College was comprised of these incredibly well-intentioned, phenomenally gifted, innovative people in this breathtakingly beautiful location. Also, like Brook Farm, money was always an issue, and one they didn't really want to deal with. And when the college disbanded every April, no one really knew whether they were going to reopen the next fall. It was like a roll of the dice every year. And eventually, in the mid-1950s, it didn't reopen, allowing in 1956 for the foundation of the summer camp that I attended and that is still active today. So these stories resonate with me because I too, perhaps like some of you, have a bent toward the intellectual, to the idealistic, toward the idyllic. And perhaps counterintuitively, it's actually cautionary tales like this one is the reason that I chose ultimately congregational ministry over academia, because I wanted to see what's actually possible. I feel a seduction toward academia, to the ivory tower, and I get so much out of academia. But I knew that, and so to go into something like congregational ministry, there's always the risk of just writing theoretically about the potential of people, the potential of religious congregations and society. But I'm deeply drawn to what is actually possible in concrete reality with, these people, in this place, with this building, in specific things like that. What's really possible here in UU Spartanburg, for example, and other progressive groups around the country and around the world. I deeply believe in the importance of progressive spiritual communities, just like this one. It's why I've dedicated my life to being a Unitarian Universalist minister. In such a time as this, our UU values truly offer a transformative way forward, a way towards building a world that truly has peace, liberty, and justice, not merely for some, not merely for an elite few, but genuinely for all. In the face of rising authoritarianism, on attacks on voting rights, attacks on human rights, we remain committed to freedom, to democracy, and to the right of individuals to discern our conscience about what is right. With the rise of disinformation and propaganda, we remain committed to reason and to science. In response to a growing awareness of white supremacy culture, we have redoubled our efforts as a movement to anti-racism, to anti-oppression, to multiculturalism. And against the threats of hatred and division that threaten to keep us apart, we seek to model a robust pluralism where we stipulate up front we don't believe in common, but we also don't have to believe alike to love alike. As we seek to co-create beloved communities here in the 21st century, while also being aware of lessons like from Brook Farm, from Black Mountain College, and so many other short-lived experiments in utopia, I want to share with you one touchstone that's come to be really important to me from my colleague, the Reverend Elizabeth Nguyen. She was a former co-chair of our Side with Love campaign. It's really helped sustain my own work in building beloved community. She encourages us to remember that as we seek to do the work of justice, keep in mind that we are saved from perfection. That's so much of what they were seeking, and many of these. We are saved from perfection. When I first heard her say that, I thought, wow, there's something really true in that. And I also felt it in my body. It felt like, whew, we're saved from perfection. I could feel my shoulders relax. Take a second just to let that sink in. How do you receive that we're saved from perfection? If it feels comfortable to do so, maybe just place a hand on heart center. Place maybe another hand on your gut, just offering yourself a little compassionate touch. And just notice what it feels like to have this affirmation wash over you, that we are saved from perfection. You're saved from perfection. You're not going to get there. I don't know if that's, we can fight about it at the door if you want to. I think you're saved from perfection. I'm saved from perfection. In contrast to the perfectionistic and often rigid and brittle attempts that often characterized historic attempts at building the beloved community, I think it can be this incredibly liberating starting point. Not that we don't want to aim high, but that we are actually saved from perfection. We can let go of perfection here in the 21st century because we know what our overly optimistic 19th century forebears did not know. There is no inevitable progress onward and upward forever. There's just no guarantee of that. But there's good news here as well. When we realize that we're never going to reach perfection and we're not going to be perfect in the process, we open up the possibility of a much kinder, a much more compassionate, a much more humane future for all of us. In that spirit, I'll close for now with a quote from Peter Morales, the first Latino president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. Reverend Morales begins by saying, "I am a recent UU, but I would have been a UU 20 or 25 years ago if someone had invited me and if someone had welcomed me and my family." There's so much just in that first sentence from our first Latino president of the UUA. How many of you have said yourself or heard someone say, "For many years I was a UU and didn't know it"? Anybody? Okay. Now, we aren't a people of coercion, but we also don't want to be the best kept secret in town from people who come here and wish they'd found us 20 or 25 years ago. We don't want to be the best kept secret from our neighbors who may find UU congregations just like this one to be the spiritual community they have longed for but didn't even know was possible. Maybe didn't even have the words to articulate what this could be and what this already is. It brings me up short when I hear that someone who became president of our Unitarian Universalist Association wished he had known about us 2 decades before he found us. It's really not just his loss, it's our loss, right? So I gently invite you to consider, do you have a friend or a family member, a colleague? Is someone coming to mind right now that you need to gently, open-handedly, not coercively, but also not keeping this a secret, of this place when you see that Ann or Scott or somebody's offering a topic that you're like, you know what, this person would really appreciate that. Maybe invite them to join you. If they're not into it, that's okay, but not be the best kept secret. Invite them, and they can even join you online today, right? It's a much lower threshold. And it's so much easier to walk into a place for the first time if you know there's going to be a friendly face instead of just strangers. Reverend Morales continues about our ongoing work to be more authentically welcoming. Because remember, he said, not just invite my family, but really welcome us, right? He says, "My dream for Unitarian Universalism is that we confess we don't have all the answers." We use often, we know a lot of things. But he's like, that we confess we actually don't have all the answers. We need to admit that this is hard work. This work of anti-racism, anti-oppression, multiculturalism, truly and genuinely and authentically welcoming people in a way that they experience as welcoming, intent versus impact, right? Not just how we think we're welcoming them, but actually in a way that is experienced as welcoming. He said this work of anti-racism and anti-oppression and multiculturalism is as rigorous a spiritual discipline as we will ever encounter. We not only have gifts to give each other, we are gifts to each other. We are gifts to each other. And we are lessened when any one of us is away. Our journey toward wholeness, he says, has just begun. We are not sure of the way. We have often lost our way in the past, believing our destination was in sight and easily reached, just like James Freeman Clarke. He thought it was just over the horizon in the 20th century. And we all know nothing went wrong in the 20th century, right? Morales says we were a bit arrogant. We were a bit naive. But we are wiser now, and we know that we will not get there soon, but we know that we need to walk together, and we need to walk humbly. So come, let's make that journey together. Let's take it one step at a time, paso por paso. Let's take it hand in hand, mano y mano. Come, let us leave no one behind. Together, we can make this journey. Come. I am grateful to be on that journey together with you in the broadest sense in this UU movement of moving toward the beloved community. In that spirit, let's rise in body or spirit. Take your teal hymnal, turn to page 1018. We're going to sing together, Come and Go With Me. This is one of these songs you may notice. It's what Woody Guthrie used to call a zipper song, that after the first verse, you just need to know what you zip out one word and you zip in another. So after the first verse, you just need to know freedom, justice, and singing in turn. So that you may even find you can kind of let go of being your face in that hymn book and sing out. Freedom, justice, singing, all you need to know after verse 1. Let's sing together.
Thank you, Carl, this morning for your meditation and for leading us through that. And I hope that we sort of jumped ahead and see that the extinguishing of the chalice is, I hope that you make mistakes. Maybe it was reference to the song we just sang. I don't know. But that was fun. As we extinguish the chalice, follow along as I read an excerpt, I Hope That You Make Mistakes, by Neil Gaiman, one of the most popular and prolific fantasy and science fiction and graphic novel authors of today. I hope that you make mistakes, because if you are making mistakes, then you are making new things, trying new things, learning, living, pushing yourself, changing your world. You're doing things you've never done before, and more importantly, you're doing something. So that's my wish for you and all of us, and my wish for myself. Make new mistakes. Make glorious, amazing mistakes. Make mistakes nobody's ever made before. Don't freeze, don't stop, don't worry that it's not good enough or it isn't perfect. Whatever it is, art or love or work or family or life. Whatever it is you're scared of doing, do it. Make your mistakes next year and forever.
So as we prepare to go from this place and into the rest of this day and into the week to come, as we continue on this journey of building beloved communities, may you continue your journey with love. May you care for one another, and may you care for this one earth. We're not getting another one, right? Care for one another. Care for this one earth. Do justice and make peace. And as you go, whatever taste or touch you've had in this time and place, whatever glimpse you've had of some hope, maybe some peace, some joy, some love that you didn't have previously, that goes with you out into the world. We are different for having spent this time together and with one another. May you live boldly. May you live with thanksgiving. Go in peace.
We have spent time together, and these holy moments give us strength to go down the winding road until we meet again. We have spent